time to Tomer, who just managed to get here on time from AudioLabs. And he would tell us a bit more about how to reach 1,000 users before writing a single line of code. Tomer is a tech entrepreneur. He's a full-stack developer, an amateur tech writer, and a podcaster. He grew up in the Silicon Valley, so his digital career started quite early. Already at the age of 13, he taught himself how to code his first website, which he later then sold for $10,000 at the age of 15. He's been quite busy building since then. During the years, he's been over 40, that's really 40 plus, oh my God, side projects or companies in software as a service, in media, in consumer and e-commerce. Many of them he bootstrapped. Some of them were backed by venture capital. Most of them he shut down, and some of them he sold. Tomer is most passionate about the initial stages of finding a product market fit through product validation and rapid MVP and early scale. Come, join me on stage. Big applause also for Tomer this time. Jump in. I guess you can use this one, or if you would like, we can also provide you with a different. Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well then, Tomer, the stage is yours. I'm very curious about your presentation today.
Thank you very much. So I came here, guys, to share the story of what we're doing with AudioLabs and how we're doing rapid validation on products. And I'm going to share, some more tactical stories and insights. And I think if you're thinking about building a startup, you're a developer and you want to code some things with your friends, if you're a designer that's joining, a lot of the things in this next 20 minutes will be very, very helpful for you, hopefully. And if I have time, I'll leave some time for questions. So let's get started. Before I kind of jump into the actual tactics, I want to share a story. I'm a developer. As you guys heard, I started developing at a very young age. Are there any developers here in the crowd? Okay, quite a few. Very nice. And me and my, during college, me and two friends, we were all software developers. We decided to launch a startup, probably like many of you sitting here. And we're developers, so what we know how to do is to code. So we thought of an idea, we researched it online, we made a huge plan of how this platform will need to be built and all the features they'll need, and we started coding. So 3 developers coding part-time for 9 months. So it took us 9 months to finish this platform, and it had everything you can imagine in the marketplace. So buyers and sellers can sign up, and there's payments, and you can message each other and add a profile picture and connect your Facebook account. All these huge features. And 9 months is a long time of R&D for 3 people. And what we saw, after 9 months, we started talking to users for the first time. And what we saw is that nobody cared. Nobody signed up. Okay, I'm actually joking. We did actually have signups. But the funny thing was, 90% of the features we developed weren't touched. So the launch was successful, but they only used 10% of the features we built. Meaning, we could have done the actual coding in 1 month and not 9 months. So we wasted 8 months, which in startup land is a long, long time. And after you raise money and venture capital, you'll see it becomes millions of dollars, and you're wasting it. And that was when we kind of learned our lesson, and we said, never again. We'll never build software again before we have a clear indication that a user wants to use this product that we're going to develop. Because does anyone here know the number one reason why startups fail? You probably do. Nobody cares. That's the number one reason. Startups build something that nobody wants. And they build it for years, and they never get traction, they never get users, they never get revenue, they don't get funding. And this is why most startups die. And R&D is very, very expensive. And this is the kind of my lesson, and what I want to show you guys today is that you shouldn't jump to R&D and coding and product development before you have users that say, yes, this is interesting. If you built this, I would use it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how we reached 1,000 users that signed up to our B2C consumer project before writing any code. And everything I show you here is something that you guys can do with using no-code tools and some graphic design. And you don't need to be a developer for this part. Afterwards, you do need to be a developer. And the advantage I want to talk to you about is that there are many methods of validating a product. You know, many people teach, to launch a survey. When I was in college, that's what they taught us. You know, do a survey, send it to your target audience, and ask them questions. And in my career, I've seen that it's not the best strategy for validating a product because people often tell you something different than what they actually end up doing. And the best way to validate a product is to actually put it in front of the user's screen and see if they want it, if they try to download it, if they try to buy it, if they try to engage with it. Okay, so that's kind of the story here I'm going to share today and how we did this. This was actually a product we did just last month, so it's very recent. And these are kind of the 5 things we're going to talk about today. So one is, the first step is you have to correctly define your target market. But maybe just before this, who here is thinking about starting a project or a company? That's it? All right. And who's a developer? Okay, most developers. Any designers in the crowd? Okay, a few in the back. Okay, very cool. So, number 1 is this whole thing is based upon the fact that you know who you're targeting. Okay, so you do have to have a clear grasp of your target market. So where are your users located? How do they look? What are their demographics? How old are they? What is the value proposition, right? What are the pain points that these users have today? And how are you offering to make it better? And what kind of messaging would be effective with these users? And this could be kind of an assumption. You don't have to have the facts, but you have to have some kind of assumption you want to test. And I'll give you guys, real life examples. In this presentation, there are many print screens that I did last night. So I try not to censor anything because I want to give you guys the real picture and how it actually looks. So that's the first part, just defining properly target market, value proposition, messaging. The second is the landing page. So this is the page where we're going to send our users to actually see the product, and that's how we're going to engage with them, through a landing page. And I'll show you guys how we built ours and how you can build your own. I'm going to talk about the 2 different channels we used for our product to bring in users to see this landing page and sign up. And we used a Product Hunt, which is an excellent channel, and Twitter, which is also a great channel if your audience is active on Twitter. I'm going to share a bit more about how we got these 1,000 signups and what this means for a startup that's trying to raise money from venture capitals, and how this de-risks a lot of the things that you're doing when you can actually show users want this app. And finally, what to do afterwards. So we did this we validated this as interesting. What's the next step? And that's to actually build the MVP, which kind of goes into the coding area, but how you can do something very, very quick which still offers value to the user, but doesn't take 9 months, but only 4 weeks. All right, let's get started. So, number one, we talked about this. We want to define our target market. So, in my example, and maybe I'll share a bit about the startup I'm building right now. It's a company called AudioLabs, and we're helping audio creators, such as podcasters, live audio streamers, to get more listeners from their content, because recording podcasts takes a lot of time, and usually it gets very little listeners and reach. So we're helping them distribute their audio into all the different channels that exist today, and for the ones that have enough reach, how to make them earn money. In the end, once a creator can earn money from his creation, they're more likely to continue working and create better content. So this is our target audience. So we're targeting audio creators who are creating audio on Twitter. We did start with a very specific demographic, and I think that's important when you're testing something. Start small, right? Remember always Amazon started with books. That's it. You don't have to start with everything. You should choose a section or a problem which you feel that it is small enough that you can win, and it can be expanded in the future to other topics and adjacent areas. So we started with people who are creating audio on Twitter. The value proposition, right? What is the problem that they have? They're not getting enough listeners on their content and their audio. What do they want? More listeners. Pretty simple. And the value proposition is we're going to take their audio from Twitter and we're going to push it onto YouTube. So we're going to convert the audio into video format and upload it to YouTube. And on YouTube, hopefully they're going to get more listeners. All right, that's the value proposition. And the messaging that we found to be effective is more listeners, again, and diversifying their channels. So, today's social media platforms are changing the algorithms quite often. And if you're only on one platform, and let's say Facebook, and suddenly Facebook decides to change the algorithms, you could be a bit screwed because you're only on Facebook. So if a creator has content on all different platforms, they're much more likely to, their content is diversified and it creates a stronger business for them. Okay, so these are the main things that we understood. And getting to this point is something you have to do before. So this is something which took us months of interviewing users and creating audio by ourselves. You do have to come to the table with an initial set of assumptions which you believe is worth a shot. And the more research you do, the more likely this whole thing will succeed. But it's okay that if you're not 100% sure and you know only parts of the things, that's also okay. All right, so that's the first step, defining the target market, value proposition, and messaging. And I would suggest doing at least 10 interviews before with your target market, talking to them about what they're doing today, and that's how you will get these answers. All right, let's move on to number 2. One of the most interesting parts, building the landing page. Anyone here built a landing page in the room? Probably the developers. So. Okay, great. So building landing page is an art and science. There's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of platforms. I will mention on all the slides the tools I used. So I used the tool Webflow, which is it's one of the website builders. It's a bit more suitable for developers because I found myself with platforms like Wix, which are popular. I found myself as a developer quite frustrated because when I wanted to change something, like a small button and add like a JavaScript to some button, I couldn't do it with Wix. And it's annoying. As a developer, I want full control. So Webflow actually is a tool that allows you to drag and drop, but also if you're a developer, you can kind of go deeper and add custom events and change pretty much whatever you want. So highly recommended. And the key concept of this landing page, and this landing page was very, very successful. In a few slides, I'll show you guys the results of this campaign and what the conversion rate was. It was very high, in the double digits. For me, it was important to make sure a user that comes to this landing page will understand in 10 seconds what is the value proposition and what he has to do to take the next step. And that's why I made sure it was very small. This is the whole page. No scrolling, one pager. So you can pretty much see everything. And it has very minimal concepts. Headline, subheadline, 3 value proposition points, right, from our previous slides. An image, because we love images, right? And a clear call to action. And you can see there's one here in the middle and another one in the corner. And it's also super important to make sure your users can always know what their next step is, because you want to collect these leads, right? This is everything. And so you have to make sure this works properly. You have to make sure it works properly on mobile and tablets as well, right? And this is kind of the main thing we had. So we used Webflow. We built this page to be very simple, to convey the value proposition, and have a very easy to use, easy to find call to action, which I'll show you guys in the next slide. All right, so when the user clicks Get Started, what happens? The user at this point probably thinks this product is ready. Maybe some of you also think this product is ready. There's no product at this point. It's only the landing page. And in a second, we'll talk about, what users feel when they understand that this product is not ready yet. But when they click Get Started, we'll open a form. And we used Typeform, which is another kind of no-code tool, which I highly recommend. So instead of developing this form, which would probably take a few hours of development time, we use this kind of no-code tool. We connected it with Webflow. And we have like a native embed, which leads to very high conversion rates. In a second, you'll see how much. And it was also super important for us to ask the user as little questions as possible. Every question you ask will reduce the amount of people that sign up. So if we ask for his first name, last name, email, Twitter handle, that's 4. And then he has like the submit button, that's 5 clicks. That's a lot. Every one, we're going to lose probably 10% of people. So we went with the minimum. We went with only his email address, because we do need to communicate with him. And we asked for his Twitter handle, his username on Twitter, because that's pretty much what gives us his name, his country, how many followers he has. And that's how we can determine how valuable this user is. And we checked beforehand that we're able to extract all these other information from Twitter. And that's why we're able not to ask for his name and how many followers and which country he lives, even though the country isn't super important. But this is kind of an interesting hack. So we had 2 questions, and that's also what led to a very high conversion rate. So make sure the call to action is very simple. Only ask the questions that you actually need, and don't just add everything, because maybe it'll be useful. So keep it very lean. Next, we had over 1,000 signups, as you know from the title of the conversation here. But some users are more valuable than others, right? And so what we did is we used Slack and Zapier. So Zapier is this tool where you can connect different tools. So we configure that when someone signs up on that form, on the landing page, through Zapier, it's going to post to a Slack channel. And this Slack channel, we're going to start segmenting users into 2 groups, okay? And we're going to call them VIPs. A VIP is a user which we think will have much, much higher value for us and for them. And we're going to prioritize on these VIP users. And this is something we did using the fact that we had their Twitter metadata. So you can see here, this is pretty much all the data we have on the user from their Twitter. And using this, we're able to segment who is a VIP user. And this goes into a separate Slack channel, which is really cool because it also helps us kind of monitor this campaign and see, okay, this user is super important. He has 2 million followers. Let's talk to him. And what we're able to do, we did another kind of automation that 1 hour after the user signs up, and in a second I'll explain why 1 hour and not instantly, we send them an email. If they're on the VIP list, they get an email saying, you've been accepted. And we want you to be one of the first users to use this product. And there's a link on the bottom to our CPO's Calendly. And that's how we kind of got as 25 or 30 very, very powerful users as first adopters, and we got them on a call. So we were able to interview them as well, onboard them, and make sure that we're actually leveraging them. And this is a strategy that wouldn't work if we gave all of the users access, because we would just have too many conversations to have. We're a startup, we can't talk to everyone. So this is kind of the technique we used. And the reason why it was sent after an hour, does anyone know why? No, it's actually to give the impression that it is manual review. If it was sent instantly, what would you think? It's tech, right? It's rule-based. So the fact that we actually sent it after an hour gave us higher open rates because it feels a bit real. So after an hour, the VIPs got an email saying they've been accepted. Everyone else got an email saying that they're on the waiting list. And in the next few weeks, they're going to get access. So we're taking care of them as well. All right, so that's a bit about the automations we did, which I think are very, very interesting. Let's move on to traffic, right? How do we get users to view our landing page? And I'm under the assumption that we don't have a huge budget, so we're not going to buy these users on Google Ads, right? That's not lean. When you raise $20 million, you can do that. We use two things that were kind of affordable and pretty instant. One is Product Hunt. Anyone here know what Product Hunt is? Okay. So Product Hunt it's a website where startups, mostly startups and people that have side projects, they launch their projects on Product Hunt. And it follows the similar model of Reddit or Dig, if anyone remembers back in the day, where people submit projects, people vote for the projects they like. The ones that are the most voted get a lot of traffic because they're on the top of the page. Completely free resource. And we launched our product on Product Hunt, even though the product was not developed. And again, it's still a landing page. And in a second, we'll talk about what this means. And we were able to get to the front page of Product Hunt. And this brought in a lot of traffic and a lot of users. Not all of them are targeted. They're not all our target audience, but there were a lot of them there. So highly recommended when you start something new, just throw it on Product Hunt. You never know what's going to happen. You'll get feedback. And if it's crap, at least you'll know quickly that it's crap. Number 2, we use Twitter. And who's active on Twitter here? Okay. So some countries are a bit more active, some are less. I have to be honest, I wasn't very active on Twitter since before a year ago. I was more active on LinkedIn and Facebook. So it doesn't matter exactly where, but our audience was on Twitter. So what we did was this. We launched a few tweets, and we tested 3 messaging using tweets. So we launched 3 tweets, and we kind of saw which tweet got the most likes and attention. And that is the one that we kind of focused on during the launch. And here, what we did is we did have a small budget. We had a budget of $1,000 for this whole project. And we started kind of putting like $50 a day into boosting this tweet. And you can see here, this is kind of the result of the $1,000. It gets a lot of reach if your tweet is, on point to the right target market. So people are starting to reshare, semi-organically, semi-paid, and it got really, really great results. And this is also, try new platforms. There's other things except Google Ads and Facebook. There's a lot of new channels, and usually the ones that aren't as popular are cheaper because there's less, advertisers competing with you. So we were able to get clicks with very, very cheap, like 5 cents a click for, let's say, a European or American user. That's very, very, very cheap. And this is because we kind of leverage the fact that not many people are doing these things on Twitter. And there's a lot of opportunities like that. So that's the 2 channels we used to bring in users to our landing page. And these are the results. So this is the 4 or 5 weeks of the results. You can see here the number of signups. You can see on the top right the page views the landing page got, number of signups, and the conversion rate. So 12% conversion is, I've launched so many products in my life. I've never seen this kind of high conversion rates. Usually 2% is good. Even 1% is great. And I think the fact that it was so high was a combination of a very underserved target market, a very effective landing page, and the application was very simple. And I think a lot of things came together. So I wouldn't expect my other projects to get this high. But this is an example when everything kind of comes perfectly, the results are just amazing. And this is a number which I do share with some of my investors or potential investors. And it shows a lot of very strong things about the problems we're solving, the execution of the team. And I think these are great things when you're starting a company that you should push out and share with your stakeholders. So these are kind of the numbers behind the scenes of the launch. We did get most of the traffic and the signups in the first week or 2, and then it kind of slowed down a bit, which makes sense. Okay, so we have the signups. We have the VIPs. So we had 41 VIPs out of the 1,000. And we talked to around, so all of these VIPs were sent this email that I mentioned. And 60% of them actually clicked the link and booked a call with my co-founder and had a talk with us, which was super helpful because we got the point of view of 25 power users, which is usually a bit more relevant than a standard user. And this was also able to give us some celebrities. So we even had one acting president of a country sign up. And apparently some presidents are on Twitter. And a lot of other social media influencers and people with a few million followers. So we had a lot of great users, which will help us build our product. And this is all because of this campaign. All right, so what happens now? We have this great results. Now we have 1,000 users that we told them that they're going to get access to this product in a few weeks. There's no product. What do? You got to build a product. All right, you can't fake it anymore. And this is a good problem to have. If nobody would have signed up, which is an option, right? These things could fail, and around 50% of these things that we do, they fail. So, I'm here today talking to you about the successes, but don't expect 100% success rate. Innovation always has the risk of failing. And if you don't want to fail, then you're not really trying to innovate. So what we decided is we need to get something into the hands of these users in a few weeks. So 4 weeks was kind of our deadline. I preferred a bit sooner, but this is only using one developer. And what we did is we pretty much coded a very simple React and Node.js app that allows these users to create an account, attach their Twitter profile, so log in with Twitter, and submit a very small form that they can tell us which Twitter conversations they want to repurpose to YouTube. Very simple. There's nothing too advanced here. There's a connection with Twitter. There's a form, and this is something that it's a reasonable task to develop in 4 weeks, including design and QA and production and DevOps. So this is something which is reasonable, and we got it done in 4 weeks, which was 1 week over planned. We thought it would be 3 weeks. Another thing here, developers are famously bad at estimating deadlines, and I do it myself, and I've just accepted it in life. So don't feel worried if things take longer. It always happens, even to the best of us. So within 4 weeks, we had this launched. This was actually last week, and we sent this out to all the users on the waiting list, and now they're kind of coming in. And it's okay that not all of them will sign up. I assume even if half of the 1,000 sign up, that's great. And now we have 500 users that are using our product, even if it's kind of a very simple MVP. And this whole thing was done with a budget of $1,000. So that's really good results. And assuming this thing didn't work out, then you wouldn't need to develop anything, right? Which is great. So when we do these things and they fail, and there's only 5 people that signed up, then nobody's really worried too much. We can just email them and say, listen, the product didn't work out. Thanks for signing up. Or people just forget about it. People sign up to a lot of things every day. So don't worry too much about misleading users and making them feel there's something here when there actually isn't. A lot of people do it, and most people move on pretty quickly. Nobody's crying at home. So this is kind of what we did afterwards, which I think is a very interesting step as well. Now, a bit about how long this took beforehand to prepare, right? Because I made everything sound very simple. We did this, but how long did it take? The first part, defining target market, it took 4 hours, which makes it seem very quick. But this was after months of research. So if you do need to kind of do this properly, and if you don't do the research properly, you're risking that the whole kind of campaign might fail, or a higher chance of failure. So I would get to the point where you have a hypothesis of something that you feel semi-confident that might work. The landing page, it took around 10 hours to design. The designer worked 10 hours, and the front-end developer worked around 8 hours. Actually, I did the front-end myself because I love front-end, even though I probably shouldn't be doing it anymore. So this is around 8 hours of Webflow. I think doing it in React or something would probably take a bit longer because of the forms and the integrations. So I'm a big, strong supporter of using no code, especially if you're developers, because sometimes developers don't like these tools. But always value your time more, and if you can do the same result in less time on a platform that someone else already built, it's better. So 18 hours of work on the landing page, creating the campaign on Twitter and Product Hunt didn't take more than 10 hours. So this is kind of writing the texts, working with the graphic designer on how to make the right graphics for the right resolutions, these kinds of things. After we had this whole system that onboarded the 1,000 users, send out these emails, the Slack, the Calendly, we actually had to talk to them. So we spent around 10 hours talking to these VIP users, which are very, very high productive hours. We also tried to record as many as we could by asking permission, and afterwards we analyzed them, which also helps share with investors. Showing investors your users talking about the problem they have is much more compelling than you as founders telling the investors, because the user is talking from a point of his own self-interest, and it's more compelling. So we've added into our investor deck 3 or 4 kind of snippets from these Zoom interviews, which I've seen is very, very effective. I can also see that investors are viewing these. So that's also a very interesting strategy to leverage these interviews for your fundraising process when that happens. And we built finally the MVP. This took around 4 weeks, so 4 weeks. And so this whole thing was done in around 10 works, 10 the first 4 steps took us around 10 days of man hours. So we were 2 people doing this. So for 1 week with 2 people, and we spent around $1,000 budget. So I think this is a very kind of a minimal MVP, a minimal campaign. I think you can probably do it with a bit less money. If money's tight, you can just put $200. You'll probably see similar results. All right, so we talked here about a lot of things. Hope I didn't overwhelm you too much. I think it's so important to never forget this. This is something I always tell myself: always validate. And sometimes I don't always listen to my own advice. So many times we do develop something on hunch, even though there's no users. And I think that's also not a great idea to do over time. And what this whole process does for your startup, it does so many amazing things. One, it proves to yourself and to investors that you're able to reach and acquire users, right? One of the hardest things is to grab someone's attention and get users in. And there's thousands or tens of thousands of great startups with great technology and maybe great products that just never were able to get users in to their product. And that's why they fail. So this kind of proves that you're able to get users, which is super important to yourselves to prove that. You can prove this problem that you're solving, it resonates with an audience. This is actually something that people have a problem with, which is also, when you're developing a side project, and most people, they do a side project and they kind of give it up after a while. You need this motivation. And when you hear users saying, thanks so much for developing this product, even though you didn't develop it yet, it gives you a lot of motivation to move forward. And don't underestimate motivation. It proves the value proposition and your solution is the right fit. Because we did mention how we're going to solve their problem, right? We're going to convert the audio into a video, YouTube. So it also proves that. So we're much more likely to make a product that works well. We've also tested pricing points. So half of the users, of these users that reached the landing page, they saw a pricing page. And they checked out the prices. And we saw which pricing points people clicked on. Did they click on the $5 a month, the $20, the $100, or the contact us, the scary button? And we saw that our assumption was that if this isn't a big problem and it's a nice to have problem, most users will click the $5 package. And we saw that 67% clicked one of the other ones, the more expensive ones, which made us realize our target market does have money for this solution, and it is important enough that they can pay $50 a month, which is very important for fundraising because you can start calculating your lifetime value of a customer. If they buy the $50 a month, it's $600 a year. So you can start getting into kind of the unit economics. It gave us 25 interviews, which are priceless, including the recordings, which we used on investor decks. And the most important thing, we got internal justification to spend 4 weeks of R&D. Because 4 weeks is still something. And depends which country, but in some countries, a developer could be $10,000 a month. In the US, it could be $15,000 a month. In other places, it could be thousands, but it is an expensive resource. It's the most expensive resource. And anything you can do to reduce the risk before you go into R&D, you should do it. And it brings us closer to finding the holy grail of product market fit. And I wouldn't say this is product market fit. This is a strong signal. we still have to see that they actually come back and use this product, the MVP, and we have to make the MVP better and push more versions and more versions. It'll probably take 2 or 3 months until we see steady retention and add the pricing so people will start paying. And only then that we'll be able to say we have product market fit and go drink champagne. But we're much closer. And I think this is something many of you can do. And I'm not saying this can fit for all of your businesses. This is more a B2C consumer angle. I think if you're doing something very technical or very B2B, it might be a bit harder, the strategy. But I think you can try something similar and do this several times, and you're going to be much, much closer to building a startup that can raise millions of dollars for investors and turn your dream into a reality. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions?
I would actually suggest so, and I'm actually very sad that I didn't meet you 6 months ago before we started developing our own platform. I think we did everything wrong back then. You can raise your hand if you have a question. I guess my colleagues would also help me again with the micro, and because I'm here on the stage, I'm going to be the first one. Tell me, did you use some specific methodology or technique to do the interviews with the VIP users? Mm-hmm. There is the mom's test or your methodologies like this?
We did have a list of questions that we had beforehand. We had kind of a template of the 30-minute call. So we would, I'm not sure it followed a very strict formula, but usually it was around, tell me, how do you create content? Why are you creating content? What's the most difficult thing in your job to do? What is your dream? What would you want to have from this? So asking mostly questions about the users day to day and what their goals are and what their motivations are. I think that's
so you were doing like mini podcasts with them. Who is the first question? Maybe you can also introduce yourself. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Ionuț. Thanks for the presentation. You're a great speaker. I was wondering, you mentioned you spent 4 hours for the target audience, but that only came after months of research. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us more about what that research was?
Yeah. So before this whole thing, we've been working on this project for a year, this whole company, and we did around 4 of these tests in this 1-year period. So usually 1 every 3 months. And every time we would kind of interview, we're basing most of our research on interviews and actually seeing people creating content and repurposing content. So we kind of have a big notion of all of the interviews we had from day one. And a lot of this data, kind of insights are accumulated across, so every MVP we did for this target audience made us learn and understand them better and better and better. So I think there is also value to sticking in one field and not jumping into different industries every second. So it's mostly about interviewing users, about their pain points, observing them. So we would see some users would take their Twitter recordings, their audio, and they would manually create a YouTube video, the ones that know how to do that. And we would see some of these on YouTube, and we would DM them, say, listen, how'd you do this? I also want to do this. And they would tell us, yeah, it took me 5 hours, it was horrible, it was really hard. And then so we were observing users doing this thing manually. Mm-hmm. I think that was also interesting validation. But pretty much talk to users. That is the number one thing. And don't try to push your product first. First, try to understand them. What do they want out of life? What's in it for me is a very interesting concept. They don't care about you at all. They just care about themselves. And I think that's all humans, and that's fine, right? You guys are here because you want to learn something. That's your interest. That's fine. So always remember that when talking to users. Don't try to make them say yes to your product. Just try to observe and learn.
Thank you, Tomer. This was actually a great remark. I see one question there. And there is one question here from the lady. Maybe the lady could be first.
The guy was first, so if he doesn't mind, I can start. But is it
was,
all right?
It was easier from a logistical point of view
Yeah,
for
well, okay, I'll go
the
first.
colleague.
So,
Yes.
hi everyone, I'm Andrea from Taptitude. I'm really curious, Dean. So, from what I understood, you grew up in Silicon Valley, and I'm really curious from a mindset perspective. How did that place help you? Like when you travel around the world and you see the startup scene from other places. I'm just curious how, if you were to pick 3 things that Silicon Valley enabled you from the mindset perspective, what would they be?
I don't think there's such an advantage or a big benefit as it maybe it seems. So I did grow up in California until the age of 12. Today I live in Tel Aviv, which is also another tech hub. I would say the one thing that was probably easier for me was that I probably got access to internet, like high-speed internet, or at least as fast as it was in the 90s.
We have this here in Romania as well. Okay, what else?
Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
No, so
What else?
I think I got experience to computers and tech at a very young age. This was in the 90s, but I started I got a computer when I was 7, in 95, 96. But I think other than maybe having a few years before other places in the world, I don't think there's a very big advantage. I even think a lot of smaller cities like Cluj have a lot of advantages. When you hear about all the developers in the city and the relatively attractive pricing here and the relatively low costs, I think that's a huge advantage as well. Because if you're able to build a product right here, sell to more expensive places in the world, you're going to make money and you're going to be able to have a hugely successful business. And before in the presentation, you were mentioning some startups here that were based in the Balkans, and a lot of them are very successful because they have a lot of very low costs, and they still sell to very, very
sophisticated
the U.S. market, which usually has the most money to spend. So I think that's a very big advantage also here. Building local, selling internationally.
And thinking of growing internationally from day one. Then we had the gentleman here on the right side.
Hello, my name is Hunor. I have a question regarding the continuation of this project of the marketing part. While you do the validation, how do you prevent your idea being stolen? Because you just make it public, not the product but the idea. And I'm sure that there's in every corner somebody looking for just a good idea with I don't know, good software development skills or any other skill, and just there's the idea is missing.
Yeah, I think that's a very common worry in the beginning. Maybe I shouldn't talk about my idea, someone can steal it. But I think after, working most of my life in tech, I've come to the realization that the technology usually isn't the barrier to entry. So I would say many teams can do the same tech we did. There's no tech advantage at this moment. And most of the big tech companies today, if you look at why they succeeded, it's not always the technology. They have a good product and they know how to distribute it to users. The technology isn't always the most important factor. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think insights is the number one advantage you can have as a startup. Speed and doing something before others. And if you're the company that's doing all these tests, right, every month, trying something new, releasing a new product, understanding that half of them, 90% maybe would not work, you're going to find that one that works much quicker than your competitors. And maybe you'll find someone that's going to copy you. And sometimes they're going to copy the campaigns that fail, and they're going to waste their time. So that's also your advantage. If you're a company that's looking at always what other people are doing, you're going to miss a lot. and you're going to also waste time on things that someone else knows it's a bad idea. So we had one company I saw that copied one of the projects we did, and it was actually the MVP that failed. So maybe they thought it succeeded, but internally, we called it a loser. And then we saw they were doing it, so we kind of laughed. And we were already on the next one. So I would say your biggest worry shouldn't be competitors. It should be staying relevant, building something that people actually want, and not competition. Very few companies actually die from competition. They die because nobody cares about what they're building.
How many projects did you bury, by the way?
Whew, the graveyard is big.
Yeah. How does it feel when you know that, okay, this is not a product that people want, users want?
In the beginning, it's tough. I think the longer you work on it, the bigger the disappointment. So if you worked for a year and this is your dream and you developed everything from scratch and then you launch it and then nobody comes in, it's devastating. If you worked on it for 2 weeks, you don't care. You just move on, find something better, and learn from this mistake. And so again, I think if you truly want to innovate, you can't be afraid of failure, because then you'll never innovate. And that's also why some corporations they get kind of they become dinosaurs. They don't want to fail because they have stock prices and other considerations, and they don't really innovate. And their only way to stay relevant is to acquire startups like the ones you guys will build for a lot of money. So be one of those startups.
Tomer, I think if we didn't have a schedule to follow, you would be sitting here the whole day. I think we have so many questions towards you. Big applause for Tomer.
I did want to add one more thing. I love helping, and I invite any of you that want to consult about your product, your MVP, your campaign. You can reach out to me afterwards, but you can also contact me digitally, which might be a bit easier. Is there a way I can put the presentation on the screen again?
Maybe we can switch it on again.
Yeah, I'm going to put my name again, so you have the full name. And I really recommend that you guys...
Tomer Dean, yes.
One more. Here. All right. So you can add me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Those are the ones I'm more active on. Send me a message. I'll be glad to help. I can take a look at your landing page, give you some feedback. And I strongly suggesting, trying to use this model for your own success. And maybe we can do a selfie with the crowd as well.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I love this one.
All right.
So please, everyone, say Texylvania.
Texylvania.
Cool.
They're quiet.
They are quiet. I try to train them.
Thank you.